Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with another franchise deep dive. It is October, it is spooky month, it is Halloween season. It is time to dive into some horror-based content, which is a great time for the Mr. Vampire series, which will be the very first time checking out most of these films, apart from the first one, which I previously have watched a little while ago on a second viewing for today's video. As you can tell, I'm in the office. Some big changes going on with the house. We'll be slowly getting there. It's nice to have the collection back on display and had to have a good space again to kind of start doing these videos. I have changed things around a little bit so that the setup for these videos will be a little different now. I've been really excited to check out these series of films for quite some time now, with the sequels and the Magic Cop and various other kind of iterations in terms of this franchise. It has over 7 movies in this series, including kind of like spin-offs with obviously Magic Cop. There's Mr. Vampire 1992. There are reimaginings, I believe. This director is kind of known for doing these types of vampire-based movies, which were kind of just booming for the mid-80s and definitely a big craze, not just within the Western market, but also within the Hong Kong market, doing their take on a hopping vampire, and not just vampires, other mystical kind of entities and spooky kind of iterations within these series of movies, which I imagine will only continue and develop as the sequels go on. So I'm very curious and very excited. Eureka and 88 have put out some of these editions on Blu-ray and give the audience a chance to kind of check out these films for the very first time for the appropriate season, of course. I've had these films a little bit of time now, and I just kind of find the right kind of time to kind of watch them. These are big franchises to check out. And Eureka has put out the first Mr. Vampire film that was released a little while ago. This is the slipcase edition, which I'll just show you there, if you're curious. And you also get the booklet, and you also do get reversible artwork, the original artwork. And Eureka have also released the sequel movies called the Hopping Mad Vampire Saga, which has all the rest of the movies, I believe, from 2, 3, 4, and 5, all in one pack edition. There was previously a Hong Kong release prior to this, which you could get, which most people did have, but this is a complete set for the UK audience, all in one edition, which I think is really good value for money. So you're getting a lot of content all in one edition. And also Magic Cop, which is an 88 film release, which I believe is a continuation set within kind of a modern setting. So without further ado, let's dive into this madcap hopping vampire world of Mr. Vampire.
Cause the music do, anything that's raging inside you. This won't hurt me. And who's the whisper, hang on you, twisted transistor.
Mr. Vampire released in 1995, directed by Ricky Lau, which has done most of the series, including the sequels. I believe he's done all of them apart from maybe 1 or 2. He has done variations of kind of like knockoff versions of Mr. Vampire, in the sense of, spin-off kind of movies with some returning actors, some not. He also did direct the Mr. Vampire 1992. So he's been heavily involved in this kind of booming vampire craze for a better part of a decade from the success of this film. Alongside his main kind of star, and partner in crime, you could say, in these films, Lan Hing, which is the main actor, the priest character, which basically tackles the kind of vampires. He knows the kind of the tricks in the trade. He's basically the kind of the guru, to go-to guy to basically stop the vampires and other mystical kind of entities that do pop up in these films. Badass kind of costume, which has this kind of get up there, which you can see from the front cover, just really badass and really awesome, and just really kind of sells the kind of the mentor kind of sensei kind of figure character, the vampire hunter. You'll find there's a lot of vampire movies. There's always one really badass character. There's always a kind of like a sensei, some sort of like legendary kind of figure, vampire hunter, someone who's a seasoned pro. It's a really gifted actor, and I've seen him in a few other roles outside of these kind of hopping vampire movies, but he is known and kind of renowned for doing this. And it's always good to have something, that is specifically yours and very hard to kind of imitate elsewhere. So, instead of, trying to replace him with other actors, just keep bringing the same actor back over and over, whether it's an official entry, whether it's a spin-off. It's always great to see this actor pop up in these films. One of the main characters in this film is Chang Ho, which I do apologize for my pronunciation. He is a really fantastic actor, has appeared in quite a few movies, including some of the Jet Li things like Tai Chi Master and Fist of Legends, one of the main characters in this film. You've also got Moon Lee in the film, one of our very early kind of first production films, basically with Golden Harvest, playing a supporting role in this one, with almost sort of like a semi-love interest kind of character, which is just get a few action scenes here and there. Also Ricky Ray in the film, which is the more the comedic kind of character in this film, someone who's kind of turning into a vampire as the film goes along. You got a truly fantastic cast of actors doing their very first Golden Harvest movie. You know, some of them, you know, more recognizable now from where they were back then. You know, all gone on to do some really fantastic kind of projects, and all have great chemistry in the film. There was many other kind of, you know, seasoned out Hong Kong actors also in the film. For the film itself, Mr. Vampire, I think is a really excellent film from start to finish. I really enjoyed my time while we were watching this film for a second viewing. You know, when I first watched it, it was kind of the midst of kind of getting used to kind of new variations of Hong Kong movies, you know, going from the Jackie Chan, going to more kind of grounded period movies of Jet Li, and then going to more the category 3 spookier side, such a massive kind of eye-opener of movies. And I didn't know really what this film was trying to go for. Was this film actually good? Was it actually bad? I wasn't too sure ultimately. I enjoyed my initial viewing, but upon rewatching this and going through this series now and seeing a lot of the other imitators and films before this, with Encounters of a Spooky Kind and The Dead and the Deadly, I've also seen obviously the spiritual boxing part 2 with fresh eyes. I've really enjoyed my time with it. It really offers a lot more than I actually give it credit for going into it. This film not just has, you know, hopping vampires, also has other mystical kind of entities in the film. It's establishing this kind of world building, diving into kind of culture, and it's a timepiece kind of movie, of course, but also not just achieving just great characters, which is a real task to do by itself. You know, you got a fantastic collective of actors and portraying really interesting characters, as mentioned, and they all have great chemistry on screen. They're all, you know, bouncing off each other really well. The comedy of the film is, you know, in parts silly, but also works really well. It's also grounded in places. There's also a bit of dark humor. So the characters, the storyline, the kind of the comedy all flows really naturally, and it's really excellently well paced. I think this is down to a really solid script and a really seasoned director, which really knows what he's doing, knows how to use his actors, knows how to place the comedy in just the right moments within the situations. You know, the film knows when it needs to be a bit more serious, a bit more kind of horror-based, a bit more grounded, but also having fun, you know, taking the mick out of the situation that you're in, which I think is a real fine line to do. Mr. Vampire, you know, has a perfect balance of all these different ideas, and it comes together really well. And the storyline, as mentioned, is really engaging. It's really fun. It's really kind of introducing the kind of the world of, you know, mystical kind of entities and vampires and all sorts. And you've got a real good sense of kind of, you know, world building and mythology and rules and, you know, ideas that have been set, weaponry and kind of, you know, tricks and stuff kind of thing, which is fantastic, all working within the kind of the mid-80s kind of booming practical effects and just, you know, wire work and just kind of, you know, just really kind of crazy kind of, you know, ideas kind of thing kind of exploded onto screen, which is fantastic. You know, what does make a person just turn into a vampire? This idea of kind of bad karma and kind of a bad kind of aura will make you kind of potentially turn back into an undead. And this idea of a service, which is basically kind of, you know, transporting these kind of undead to various locations, put them into resting places, make sure they don't kind of terrorize anyone. I think in a modern world, I think everyone would be an undead vampire at this point, but it's an interesting kind of, you know, talking point about what makes a, you know, someone actually remain dead and someone actually come back as a potential undead vampire. And client's kind of father needs to be transported and moved. You know, there has been some shady deals in the past in terms of the land, in terms of some of their business being very kind of corrupted a little bit, kind of hinted at, and makes sense why this vampire is so kind of strong and powerful and wants to break out of the coffin and wants to kind of terrorize and turn other people into vampires as well. You got the typical kind of, you know, transformations of vampires with obviously if you get bitten or if you get, you know, infected kind of thing, but there is also treatment for that with the idea of the rice. I like the kind of the idea of to kind of trick a vampires to hold your breath. Some of the fishing line kind of, you know, interesting ideas of training the talisman kind of, you know, cards, you know, some tricks kind of thing here and there to kind of stop a vampire in its tracks. But these creatures, even though they are arguably kind of comic-y and kind of ridiculous in terms of a hopping vampire. They have a really interesting kind of specific look, which I think is great. I love the kind of long fingernails and very tough to kind of take down. You know, gunshots, you know, swordplay work, martial arts, they're not going to stop it. You have to have something very specific to kind of take it down once and for all, which I think is really awesome. And I think it really shows how dangerous they are. And especially in this film, which I do appreciate, being a horror comedy, you know, it definitely doesn't lighten up on the horror. It definitely has violence. It definitely has some kind of interesting kind of, horrific kind of transformations, and also balancing that kind of dark comedy alongside it, which is great. I think it's nice to have that kind of, one hand feeding the other type of thing. All of them have little sub stories, which I really do appreciate. They all go off and do various kind of things, and I love some of the jokes. So like my two apprentices, one gets infected by a vampire curse, and one gets infatuated with a horny ghost, essentially, which I think is quite funny. Very much a kind of a nod to maybe the erotic ghost story movies, the kind of category 3 stuff. It doesn't go far to say in terms of nudity or kind of, full-on sex scenes or anything, but it does have a bit of a hint towards there are kind of, just because you're a gorgeous woman, I mean, you're kind of vicious and deadly as well. So I really like what they do with that character and that kind of element of the film, and it offers some really great sequences, not just within kind of drama and kind of comedy, but also within badass action as well. And that's some interesting kind of sequences. I think a fight between his apprentice character and her, and I think some of the mystical kind of weaponry work I think is awesome as well. So really fun time kind of checking that out and watching that. Adds to the film as well, which I think is great. Ultimately, Mr. Vampire, I just think is a really well produced, really excellently put together film from start to finish. I think it has a great script. I think it really knows how to use that and bring that to life within its visuals, within its action, within various kind of, mystical kind of practical effects and martial arts, which is great. You've got a great series of performers and characters that help alongside it, within seasonal actors and, supporting characters and main characters, all come together to really create something special here. I think the world building, the mystical world of hopping vampires and of a kind of ghost and ghouls kind of thing kind of hinted at, I think it's great. I think the whole talisman kind of, mystical arts, I think is just really badass and really, it looks good. It looks really cool on screen. And I think everyone does a really good job overall in terms of creating something special here. That's been my thoughts and opinions on Mr. Vampire 1985. What are your thoughts, guys? Please comment down below. What is your favorite of the sequels or kind of knockoff entries? I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions. Please comment down below. So meantime, guys, Amphlett Reviews, signing out.